Hi, Caroline Kearney here at Powell Arts, and I'm standing with the wonderful Martha Knox in front of two of her three pieces that'll be in our It Is Written show from now through October 29th with a special preview during the Collingswood Fine Arts and Crafts Fair on August 19th and 20th. Martha, would you mind introducing us to your piece?
These are woodcuts. They're two-color woodcuts, and they are two in a series, a new series that I'm currently working on and almost finished with. And the whole series are all prints of pigs that have literary references, either from children's stories or in some cases from memoirs. So the one on the bottom here is from Charlotte's Web. This is Wilbur, and it says, "All these sights and sounds and smells will be yours to enjoy." It's a quote from Charlotte to Wilbur. And then the one above is the three pigs, which is a story everybody knows. And the models for these were actual pigs at the Ross Mill farm, which is a rescue for pot-belly pigs.
We have two bunnies, and our veterinary hospital that we take them to also has a rescue. And so you'll be driving in, you'll see all these pigs and a longhorn and stuff like that. So I love that you took these from life. These are such intricate pieces, and the way that you carve them, and also when you have them side by side, they're a nice juxtaposition of style, even though both are wood prints. This is a flowing text, this is more blocked, this has a lot of linear, this has a lot of curvaceousness, including the flowers. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you think of that?
Yeah, so I have rules for this series. The series is going to be 12 prints total. Obviously, only 3 are in this show. But the rules for this particular series are all in the same size. So the blocks that I'm using are 12 by 12 inches. There's the key block, which is the black ink, and they all have text in them. They're all literary references, and then they all have a color block, which I'm doing as a gradation. This one, you can kind of see it better if you're closer up, like that this is fading from more of a red to more of an orange. This one, the gradation is pretty obvious. But other than those rules, then everything else that goes into the print is more particular to my responding to the book that it's referencing. And so for Wilbur, obviously white is part of the color scheme, where in the color block I'm just carving away the white. So in this one, Wilbur is highlighted because this is actually his imaginings. Charlotte is describing, you're going to see all these seasons change because I'm going to save your life. And he's sort of imagining it. And so that's why this one, he's in the center, he's highlighted in white, and there's this flow. Where in this one, I was more thinking, okay, they've saved themselves from the wolf, and they're in this little cozy, enclosed space. They've got their little mugs of whatever with their fire going, and so it's much more
piggy
enclosed.
cocoa.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I love, and they're surrounded, and also because that is about making something more stable. This is a very dense and protective space that you surrounded them with. So some of especially in this, I'm just going to ask it straight. How did you get the text so crisp?
Oh, so crisp. Well, so the keystone is done with a linoleum block, which you can carve a lot more detailed. And then the color is the wood block.
Okay.
And that way in the color, if you get up close to these, you can actually see the wood grain in the color. I really wanted that texture. But for the black and the white, I wanted to be able to have some really, so that's the block. The lettering is actually just carved, and it just takes forever, and you just use tiny little tools and carve it.
I don't know how you have any fingers left. I dried a knife the other day and had 6 stitches. So if I did this, I would have no fingers. They'd be I was going to say I'd have to type everything, but I wouldn't have fingers. So how would I do it? So I also want to talk to you about, there's something very interesting when you're doing a 2-block print, that you are working with a minimalist of materials, and yet there is a great intricacy to what you're doing. A lot, your prints in particular are content heavy.
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
Well, that's part of, actually, we're talking about the simplification. So for this one, the rules being just the 2 blocks the color gradation, and working within a certain size, setting all these limitations beforehand, because I know the subject matter is going to have a lot and it can get overwhelming.
Making rules for your game.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and I'm a big fan of printmakers like Antonio Fresconi.
Okay.
Who, if you look at his work, it's very expressive. It's very parts of it can be really, it's whittled down visually and really using some, the basics of the color and the texture of the wood, or making the carved marks to try to express something really more efficiently, I guess, while still being expressive and being able to get some. Then it's something that feels like it has a lot of depth, even though there's not necessarily that.
Which I always find and this is particular to you, that. It was amazing when we were looking at, because of course when we review, we're looking at images and trying to get an idea of how did this manifest? How did it come together? What's the texture? What's the deal with how this goes? And your work is very intricate, and we were just fascinated by that. And of course, since it has a literary tie, it was perfect for the show. And we have another artist who works with children's storybooks, and she says about how we talk a lot with her about touchstones, and that parables, fables, fairy tales, children's stories, we tend to think of them as juvenile and for children and from a time in your life, but actually a lot of the life lessons and the social covenants and things, when we're saying about it is written and talking about these legends, it actually comes from these stories we tell each other starting very young. And so I love that you're pulling from that. I'm so glad you're making a calendar of it. So I also want to talk to you about your color is limited, obviously, but you're using white to great effect.
Yeah.
How do you think of that? Because white and black are such, obviously, most people think of them as complete opposites. Yeah. And in a lot of ways they are. I guess in entire ways they are, because one's the absence and one's the absence of color and one's every color combined. How are you thinking about white within your composition?
So I love woodcuts because when you're working, anytime you're working just in black and white, if you can only create the illusion of grays, you can also introduce a lot of textures that are more dramatic. You can have that stark contrast. And then I am introducing color, but it's just one more layer of color. So you just have the white of the paper, the black, and then whatever color is there. And so you still have that starkness. I feel like conceptually, for me, it connects to a whittling down of the visual imagery that corresponds to highlighting what's really important or what you want to emphasize. And so you could compare it to something I love botanical illustration.
Oh yeah.
And wildlife illustration. That's that because when an illustrator is taking a subject and let's say illustrating a certain type of bird or something, right? They have to
they're calling that down to the most essential things, because basically they want you to be able to say, the bird has to be general enough that when you look at another bird that has slightly different attributes, to be I look at this, I know this is a bird. When I see one that's even a little bit different than this, I still say, hey, this is a bird, because they're boiling it down to its essence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I feel that's what woodcuts you can do is it's stripping it down to something essential that you want to communicate.
And it's a nice mix between, this is definitely a theme of this show, minimalist to maximalist. Our last show, The Marvelous and Unusual, was a lot of maximalist work. And this has elements of maximalism, but usually it's in the level of detail, the level of words and language and pieces that people are putting together, but it tends to be minimalistic in terms of they're quiet, more introspective, more thoughtful, more nuanced. Not that the other show wasn't nuanced, but it's nice to have two of those next to each other so that the shows have very different feels. I love your work, obviously. You can tell by how I talk about it. I'm so glad that you're in this show with us. And we hope that you'll come see Martha's work from now through October 29th at Powell Arts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.